Please help a starving artist out by supporting me on Ko-fi. Thank you. You watched your paint dry as it glistened on the canvas. A warm wind blowing from your right. Your eyes going up and down the half-finished painting, as you try to find any blemishes or smirches. Taking a step to the side, you looked at the field before you. The grass was green, sprinkled with pink and yellow flowers. The noise of insects buzzed inside your ears, seemingly getting louder or more quiet, depending on what you were occupying yourself with. A faint claw caught your attention, its borderline translucent whiteness making your mind wander, imagining the free sky, the fluffy cloud body. You didn't even realize your mouth was half agape the entire time, as you stared absent-mindedly. You were a painter by trade, or more had been some time ago. A few years ago your art studio had burned down, destroying all the pieces that were still left unfinished, plus a few that had already been sold yet were awaiting pickup. You haven't really drawn since, taking on the moniker of Susie Soot. A soot was all that remained of your inspiration, of your work, of your creativity, and of your motivation. The fire truly had changed you. Before you were known for your abstract art that was far more complex than a mere red canvas with a singular blue line through it. But since then, whenever you tried to paint, it turned into grotesque pieces depicting violence and loss, your own art frightening you. And before you left the big city, you were leaving behind a small apartment filled to the brim with these. You had found yourself in the neighborhood of home soon thereafter, your father having won a house there during a raffle, which he promptly gifted to you, thinking a change in scenery would do you good. You were a beautiful yellow puppet with a black nose. The right half of your hair was a mix of fiery red and orange, while the other left half was black like coal. The inside of your mouth, including your tongue, was black too. And you usually wore a black maid dress, a hand-me-down from your sister, Melody Ringabel, headmaid of the Bucks O'Plenty family household. After many weeks of self-isolation, you had finally left your tiny home. You had lost a lot of weight, not really wanting to bother going to buy food, but your stomach was killing you and there was no way around it anymore. Behind you was a basket filled with goodies for a picnic, though it definitely was too much for you to eat alone. "Howdy," a voice suddenly called out to you. You turned around, staring back at them. It was a yellow puppet dressed in blue. He himself was holding a canvas on his right arm. It was Wally Darling, one of the people living in the quiet town. Of course, like with pretty much everyone else in home, you barely interacted with, so you didn't respond. But he still approached you, making you take a defensive step back. And without asking, he just plopped up his canvas next to yours, while you continued staring at him. He was preparing his paints. After a moment of silence, he looked at you and smiled. "I like coming out here. It's super great for inspiration. Sometimes I draw the sky or the forest." He pointed past the picture towards the horizon. "And if you look more closely, you can even make out a wonderful mountain range. By focusing on different combinations of things on the planes, you can make so many different paintings. You now returned your attention to your own, hoping it would shut him up. Well, it actually worked, for a bit. You were about to fall back into the same trance that made you draw these horrible, horrible pictures, when Wally interrupted you again. Oh, gosh darn, I'm all out of green. Do you have some? I specifically would like some pine tree green, if you have that, of course. Well, it just so happened that you had a tube of pine tree green. Reluctantly, you waved him over before squeezing a big glob of the paint onto his palette. You're a lifesaver, Susie. You furrowed your brows. Lifesaver was a little bit of an over-exaggeration, wasn't it? You thought. Quietly, the two of you continued, brush stroke after brush stroke. The pleasant stench of paint was beginning to become comforting again. But it was just then when your stomach loudly rumbled. It had been loud enough for Wally to hear. Oh dear, do you want an apple? You didn't respond. I got a spare one. You turned to your right, behind you, where you had your picnic basket. You sprayed out a polka dot blanket before placing your food on it. Sandwiches, garlic butter, baguettes, and a full cake with cherry frosting. Its delicious sweet scent even overpowered the smell of paint and flowers. Wally watched you place down the treats, his mouth watering delightfully. The puppet was practically eating the cake with his eyes already. You only took a glance at him before taking out a second plate. For him. Putting it opposite to you. Wally understood. Thanks, Susie, he said happily. With a thud, he landed on the ground before you. Patiently he waited for you to divide the food. Wally finished his bite before continuing to talk. You know, it was complete coincidence that I found this place. As I already said, it's perfect for landscape paintings. I think it was a year ago. Barnaby was suddenly gone, and no one knew where he was. You never guessed where the big old oaf was hiding. It was in Howdy Pillar's pantry. But that isn't important to the story. He chuckled. Wally always got nervous around you, so he just kept talking and talking, and seemingly making things worse. At first, the painter thought you'd be a rival to him after realizing you were a painter too. After all, you had this certain aura, like all artists. Just one look and, well, he could tell what your occupation was. So, while looking for Barnaby, I fell down this hill. Slipped. I know, silly me. Wally pointed over yonder, where just barely you could make out a steep incline that led up to Holmes' main road. Over there, actually. Wally stretched out his arms excitedly. And then I found this. After we found the old beagle, I just had to come back here. And paint. I was so inspired. Despite your lack of any kind of response, even facially, you clung to every word he said. Now you're probably wondering why Barnaby was in the pantry. You blinked and Wally sighed. Yeah, I guess you already see that would be a super long story. And by then you probably know Barnaby and the neighborhood better than they know themselves. It really is a long story. Awkwardly, Wally looked at you. Come on, throw me a bone, he said hopelessly. Just say something. You blinked. And after a second, Wally snapped his fingers excitedly. I know. Wally set his foot down and ran past you into the thicket. Minutes passed, as you stared at the spot where he vanished into the trees, only to return moments later with a heavy rock in his hands, rushing towards you and... No way, Wally would not do that. You rubbed your eyes. Your mind was playing tricks on you again. Ever since the fire, that seemed to be the norm. Though the painter did soon return, in his hands a dirty box. As he returned to your side, he set it down. This is a time capsule, he said. About 2 weeks before you joined our neighborhood, we buried it here. He set the box down. You know, I thought to myself, Wally, hey, you only missed it by a few days, and I think it would be unfair if you're the only one left out of the fun when we reopen it in a few years. Wally opened the password lock. Do you want to play something in it? It would mean a lot to me. There were a couple of knickknacks in the box already. A paintbrush, an empty envelope with a rainbow-colored post-it, a star-shaped glass ornament, a wooden apple, a paintbrush, a pink hair tie, a tiny black folded fedora, a rainbow-colored bird feather, and a papier-mâché heart. And other loose items were inside of it. Honestly, you didn't have anything to add. Plus, wasn't what he was doing right now a violation of the unwritten rules of time capsules? You were a little offended, but also glad you could be part of this. The hint of a smile began to decorate your face as you stood up, grabbing the tube of pine green color from your canvas. Wally grinned from ear to ear. Okay, that's hilarious, he commented as you placed the tube next to the paintbrush. Wally quickly locked the box again. I really appreciate you doing this, Susie. Thank you. Excited, Wally ran off again to bury the box, while you finished your meal. When the painter sat back down again, he was now sitting right next to you, a bead of sweat covering his forehead. His amazing pompadour looked heavy from the exhaustion. Glancing at Wally, he was completely ecstatic. It's always fun when a new neighbor comes to home. Boldly, the painter set his head on your shoulder. I'm glad you're here. You blushed heavily in response. Wait, did he mean that actually? You looked at him, and your eyes met. He smiled lightly. Are you feeling what I'm feeling? He asked, and you blinked. Because my heart, it's beating faster and faster, or is that your heart? Wally was right, your heart was pounding quite fast right now. You were practically excited. So was he. Your faces came closer, but before your lips could touch, he asked, Are you okay with this? Rolling your eyes, you took hold of his face, pulling him closer to yours. He hummed almost immediately when your lips met. Wally was warm and pleasant to the touch, and his tongue boldly began exploring your mouth. It tasted like the cherry cake, so it was pleasant. Your body now disobeying you. You took hold of his shoulders, pulling him on top of you as you lied down on your back. Instinctively, his hands took hold of the buttons on your dress, but he stopped himself right before unbuttoning the second one, raised his head, catching his breath. Are you really okay with this? He asked one last time. And you opened your mouth, smiling, before saying, yes, I am. Hey, thank you for watching my video until the end. If you're new here, I hope you stick around and watch a few more. But before I say goodbye, I'd like to remind you to like the video and subscribe. That really helps the YouTube algorithm. That's all. Hope you have a good day. Until next time. Bye!